All right, Melinda, we have 5 people. I think Chad is still going to join, but we can go ahead and get started since we have quorum.
Okay, thank you. This is Melinda Harger. I'm going to call the meeting to order right now at 2:30. Again, Melinda Harger, Vice Chair of the MPO Technical Advisory Committee. Chair Aaron Quisenberry will not be present today. Ashley, would you like to start with the introduction?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the October 6th, 2020 Metropolitan Planning Organization Technical Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Ashley Myers and I will be facilitating the Zoom video portion of the meeting. I will work alongside Vice Chair Melinda Harger, who's on remote video, to facilitate the meeting proceedings. Currently, I have everyone muted so we can talk through the general ground rules for today's meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and public access channel 25. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found on the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom menu, next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. This will make it easier for everyone to hear the meeting. Just remember to unmute if you want to speak. In the menu, you can also turn your camera on and off by clicking the video icon located next to the microphone icon. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on for the duration. If you are participating by phone, you can enter *6 to mute and unmute your phone. Somewhere on your Zoom screen, you will also see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker, while gallery view tiles all of the meeting participants. A few reminders to ensure that the provisions of the Kansas Open Meeting Act are met. As participants, you must state your name and title each time you speak. Individuals who have signed up in advance to provide public comments remotely will be called upon by name. No one has been signed up to provide public comments though. So I'll skip that. The chair will then call for in-person public comment for those who are physically present. Currently, there's no one in the room besides Kurt and myself. If someone shows up, staff will direct them to the podium to speak while following social distancing and safety protocols. All motions need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, staff will call on each member individually to provide their vote. Staff will then need to announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. I want to again remind everyone to please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Now I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair. Thank you.
Before we do that, Jessica Martin, your Transportation Planning Manager, and I'll begin with a roll call for attendance. Ed Corton. I see him, but I...
Here.
Okay.
Took
Jeff
me a while
Crick.
to find a mute.
Here.
Melinda Harger.
Here.
Wendy Kerner.
Here.
Allison Smith.
Here.
And Chad Voigt.
Here.
Aaron Quisenberry, Lindley Sanford, and Brandon Boyd are absent from today's meeting.
Thank you, Jessica. This is Melinda Harger. So item B on the agenda is public comment. Has anyone entered in the last couple of minutes? I know you already addressed that.
Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, no.
Okay, thank you. Melinda Harger, Vice Chair. Let's go to item C on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the August 18th meeting. The minutes were attached to the agenda. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those. Are there any comments? Not seeing any comments, do we have a motion to approve?
Jeff Crick, Planning Development Services. I move to approve the minutes.
Ed Corton, Community Development Director. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Melinda Harger, Vice Chair. We have a motion and a second. I'll turn over to Ashley for the roll call vote.
Thank you.
Jessica Martin, your Transportation Planning Manager, and I'll proceed with a roll call vote. Ed Corton.
Yes.
Jeff Crick.
Yes.
Melinda Harger.
Yes.
Wendy Kerner.
Yes.
Allison Smith.
Yes.
Chad Voigt.
Yes.
The minutes pass unanimously, 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Melinda Harger, Vice Chair. We'll proceed to item D, regular agenda. Item 1 is recommend approval of the federal fiscal year 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program. TIP. Ashley?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, and I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see, this one, but the PowerPoint went away. There you go. Can you see that PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the wrong screen.
It's the wrong screen. I'm going to stop sharing and try again. Okay. Yay. Okay. Again, Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner. The federal fiscal year 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program is coming before you today for you all to review it before we take it to the MPO Policy Board. And the TIP is a short-range, multi-year listing of federally funded and regionally significant projects. And the TIP is the implementation arm of the Long-Range Transportation Plan, or Transportation 2040. And it is federally required to be fiscally constrained, and it includes federal projects and regionally significant projects, like I mentioned, and it needs to be updated every 4 years. We update ours every 2 years because we do quarterly amendments, and then in order to keep it so there's not a lot of amendments, we redo the document every 2 years. The public comment period was August 26th to September 25th. We did not receive any public comments. We followed our public participation plan for this public comment period, which meant that we had it on the TIP webpage and then also on the public participation webpage, and we had it printed and placed in locations so people could access it if they did not have internet access. So the MPO office, the Lawrence Public Library, Baldwin City Public Library, Eudora City Hall, because the Eudora Library is not open for public right now, and the Compton City Hall. Fiscally constrained means that there's enough financial resources to fund projects, and the TIP is required to be fiscally constrained, which makes sense. And also we're required to show that we have enough funding to pay for O&M, or operations and maintenance expenditures, off the top before we program additional projects. And so that's what this table is showing. In the years of the TIP, 2021 to 2024, there's enough funding to pay for the operation and maintenance in addition to the projects. This is the fiscal constraint table. There's the table on the left is the anticipated funding per federal, state, and local by transit and non-transit. And then the other table is the funding, all summarized per funding type. So we have the federal and the various FTA funding types, and then also the other funding, federal funds. The TIP is also required to talk about performance measures and how we are meeting the project goals of Transportation 2040. And so when project sponsors submit projects, they have the chance to tell us which goals each of the projects are helping us achieve. And we made this table in order to show that our goals are being implemented through the TIP. One project on there, the 140, the West 27th Street, or the Dog Park Road project, didn't originally include safety as a goal that this project was achieving, partly because it wasn't checked when the project was turned into us, but we've reviewed all the projects and thought about it and realized that that's really implementing a portion of the K-10 widening project, and so it does increase safety because it provides another access point. Also, the TIP looks at all of our different safety measures, and I'll have some maps later, but we have safety performance.
Excuse me, Ashley, I need to interrupt you. Jessica Morton, your Transportation Planning Manager. I've gotten some reports for text message that the YouTube sound is not working from viewers online. I just want to make sure Kurt is aware of that.
Oops.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there are other performance measures besides just our goals that are included in the TIP document. We have all of our federal performance measures, so safety, and we talk about which of the projects are going to meet or help us meet our safety goals, which actually later in the agenda we will also discuss our 2021 safety goals. And all but one of the non-transit projects are helping us improve our safety. And there are 3 bridge projects in the TIP. One of them is on the NHS, or National Highway System, and there is a performance measure about increasing the bridge condition. Pavement condition is another federal performance measure, sorry. And there are 4 projects that are on the non-interstate NHS. Reliability is another performance measure in the TIP. We do not have any projects on the interstate, and that's where the main reliability performance measures are at. And then transit. We have 4 out of the 6 transit projects in the TIP that will increase the useful life benchmark of transit vehicles by replacing vehicles or doing preventative maintenance on those vehicles. Another thing that the TIP is required to do is look at environmental justice. And environmental justice, or EJ, is about making sure that people, regardless of income or race, have access and have the benefits of federally funded projects. And so we evaluate the federally funded projects as well as the regionally significant projects in the TIP by the environmental justice populations. And environmental justice, again, is about income and race, but the federal government doesn't tell us what exact metrics need to be used to do that. So the MPO uses the low to moderate income population data from HUD because that is used for the community development block group grants. And there's not a reason to have 2 separate versions of low income, so we use that same data point. And then minority population is also census data, and we look at block group numbers to find the minority number and then find the average and then do a 99% confidence interval to ensure we're identifying areas with higher concentrations of people who are minorities. This map shows the environmental justice areas in the county for the entire county. The one on the left is countywide, and then as you can see, it's really just around the Lawrence city limits area. So we zoom in. So the map on the right shows Lawrence, and the reason why Haskell is a little bit darker there, Haskell University, is because it doesn't have the second layer of the low to moderate income block group on top of it. So where KU is low to moderate income plus minority. And so anywhere that is gray or hatched is considered environmental justice. Now, we wanted to elevate equity in this TIP and overall in our planning work, and so we looked at best practices and thought about how transportation impacts opportunities and created this new metric called the transportation disadvantaged population, which includes the data listed here: people who have a disability, less than a high school diploma, minority, single parent household, households without vehicles, youth, senior citizens, and then the low to moderate income again. And the MPO found the regional average for each of those metrics per block group, and then created this threshold system, point system. So if that block group was the regional average to 20% higher, it got 1 point. If it was 20% higher to 40% higher, it was assigned 2 points. And then if it was 40% or higher, that block group was assigned 3 points. It was then all summed up to create one transportation disadvantaged score. And you can see here that the red is the highest score, so meaning it had the most points when you went through all those thresholds. And the light blue is the fewest number of points. So we have the county, and then we zoomed into Lawrence because, again, it was more concentrated in Lawrence. Here's just looking at the difference between the EJ and the transportation disadvantaged population with the projects included. and then also with transit included. So the one on the left, the EJ map, includes the quarter-mile buffer around the bus routes, which is generally a walking distance for people to get to the bus routes. And then the one on the left, or right, I'm sorry, has the routes in white. Next steps for this is, after you all review this, is for it to go to the MPO Policy Board, and then once it's approved, it will be sent to KDOT for inclusion in the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, and then we'll do our quarterly amendments again for the next 2 years. I developed this story map, which we'll see if it'll open. So can you still see my screen? Okay. This is a draft version of this. We haven't completely finalized it yet, but in years past, we had an ArcGIS Online version of the TIP map, so you can zoom in and look at it. But we wanted to have a little bit more information about what the TIP is and provide some more context to people, so that way they would understand a bit more about what the TIP is. So we have this here where we talk about it and show the projects, and then we show environmental justice and the transportation disadvantage, and then lastly, all of it together. I haven't figured out how to turn off any of those layers. I think they're all there, so I haven't fixed that yet. So that's my presentation for that. I'm trying to get back to the PowerPoint, but it's not working. Any questions?
This is Melinda Harger, Vice Chair. I had a question on the map right before the next step slide.
Yeah.
In the legend, the map on the right, it indicated that the university was in gray. I just noticed that West Campus was red, and I didn't know if that just got coded incorrectly or if there was a reason that campus was showing up with some of the colors.
Yes, so that on the transportation disadvantaged map, the universities were not shown, so that legend just needs to be updated to not have the university. I'll make a note of that.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the group? All right, seeing none, can we have a motion to approve?
This is Chad Boyd. I'll move that we approve the TIP.
Vice Chair Melinda Harger. We are now waiting for a second.
This is Wendy Kerner, Public Transit. I second.
Melinda Harger, Vice Chair, we have a motion and a second. And Jessica, will you be doing the roll call vote?
Yes, Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager, will proceed with the roll call vote. Ed Corton,
Yes.
Jeff Crick,
Yes.
Melinda Harger,
Yes.
Wendy Kerner,
Yes.
Allison Smith,
Yes.
Chad Boyd.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 unanimously.
And Jessica Lindley has joined the meeting.
Oh, Lindley, are you prepared to vote on this item?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay, thank you. 7-0.
All right, thank you. This is Melinda Harger, Vice Chair. So we can now proceed on to regular agenda item 2, which is a discussion on the 2021 safety targets.
Thank you. So I'm Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner again, and I'm going to try to share my screen again. Okay. Okay. All right. The proposed safety targets that staff developed were included in the agenda packet, but we wanted to talk through them a bit, and so developed this presentation. So today we want to discuss the 2019 crash data that we received from KDOT and discuss the proposed 2021 safety targets, as well as receive any feedback. And then hopefully we'll put the targets out for public comment on October 16th and bring them back for final discussion in November. Last year, when we discussed the crash data, we talked about looking at where the data was actually at. And so we developed these maps, and in 2019, there were 12 fatalities with 10 crashes and 27 serious injuries in 25 crashes, as well as 3 serious injury pedestrian crashes. And let me back up a second just to say that this is for the federal safety performance measures that we're required to do every year. Last year we set targets for 2020 using 2018 data, so now it's time to set targets for 2021 using 2019 data. This map shows the fatality crashes, and there were 1 death in each of the circles except for the one where there were 3 deaths. This map shows the serious injuries, and there were 1 serious injury for each crash except for 2 of them that had 2 serious injuries. And last time we talked about wanting to look at not exactly what jurisdiction the crashes were in, but how the roads, who owned the roads, basically. So I mapped these by the owner of the roads, and as you can see, there were 3 fatalities on roads owned by the City of Lawrence, 2 on KDOT roads, 1 on Eudora Township, and 3 in Douglas County. And then when we look at serious injuries, there were a lot more agencies. So KTA, KU, the Palmyra Township, and the out by Clinton Lake, the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism, as well as KDOT, Douglas County, City of Lawrence, which I thought was interesting. So then, looking at the types of fatal crashes, several of them, well, 2, were when vehicles ran into curbs on City of Lawrence roads, and then 2 were on trees, utility device, overturned, other vehicle, and other vehicle again. And then when we look at serious injury, you can see the various things there: fixed object, other vehicles, overturned. The yellow stars are the pedestrian serious injuries that occurred in 2019 as well. So this is a summary table of the number of crashes and the number of deaths by the road, who owned the road. And this is a potential new way to show the data based on what we talked about last time. Currently, we show the crashes by the municipality, but when we actually look at the road owner, it is different. So if we look at the jurisdiction, KDOT is not reflected, where if we look in the road ownership, KDOT has 5 fatality crashes. Same thing, Eudora Township is not reflected in the municipality way of showing it. And this is for the serious injuries. Same thing, KDOT, KTA, the Parks and Wildlife, KU, were not included. So then when we look at all that data and put it into the projections, we use the 5-year average in order to do a projection for developing the 2020 5-year rolling average. And so for using the 12 fatalities for 2019, which you can see is double what we had in 2018, the projected 5-year average is 9.2. And so then when we project it one more year to 2021, it's 10.9. And so that's what we are suggesting should be our 2021 safety target for the number of fatalities, is 10.9. And then for the rate of fatalities per 100 million, same thing, where we put in the projection, find the projection for 2020, and then project it out again for 2021. And this takes into account vehicles mile traveled. So then it's 0.88. Number of serious injuries. Again, we had more serious injuries this year, or 2019, than we did last year, or 2018, I guess. So when we do the projections out, the 2021 projection is 27.3 for the target, is what we're suggesting. And for the rate of serious injuries per 100 million VMT, we're suggesting 2.5 as the target. And for the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, we went down, which is good, for 2019 by 1. So then when you do the projections out, 4.7 is what we're looking at for our suggested target for 2021 non-motorized fatalities. Oops. So, any discussion about those targets? How do we want to go forward?
Ed Corton, Community Development Director. I just have a quick question for you, Ashley.
Sure.
On the data, you know, it went back to 2008, 2007, all the way to current. Is the same way of analyzing, the same way of looking at the accidents consistent, or is it more accurate today than it was a decade ago on reporting the particular cases?
Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner. At some point in the last 6 years, there was a change in how crashes were considered serious or not. I think KDOT has rectified all of that and sent us new data to reflect that. As far as the number of crashes that are reported, we know that's historically underreported, especially in the bicycle and pedestrian numbers, because they have to be reported to the police in order to be incorporated into the KDOT data. So as far as like looking back to 2007 and do we feel comfortable with it, I think it's the best data we have. And it is what we know, at least.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Melinda Harger. I was curious, the fatalities, they doubled in the past year, and I didn't know, as you were looking at the data, if you had any additional information that would have indicated why that was the case. As I recall from your map, there were only 1 or 2 that had more than one for the particular location and accident. So I was just curious if there was anything that stood out to you as you were looking at that data.
Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner. So this was the first year that we did as deep of an analysis as to each of the crash types and really looked at them. And so I have not looked at the previous year's data to see, directly compare. A lot of it seems to be, it's almost hard to compare because of it has to do with road condition and weather and just all sorts of things. But that's something potentially in the future we could look at. We've also, if looking at it per road owner is something that people are interested in, we could go back and look at the data that way. Maybe not all the way back to 2007, but at least a few years to see what those numbers look like.
Jessica Morton, your Transportation Planning Manager. The request to look at the data based on roadway ownership was something that Douglas County, both Keith Browning and Chad Boyd, had asked us to do last year, primarily because they were concerned that a predominant number of crashes were getting assigned under unincorporated Douglas County, but yet they were out of their control to address. So I think part of tying it to roadway ownership really allows us to better assess where we need to look in terms of for solutions, or in terms of prioritizing safety in budgets, in terms of geometric improvements or other projects for when there are identified projects that could happen that could improve safety. And I think tying it instead just to geographical area doesn't allow us to do that in the same way. And so I think that's going to be a benefit of reporting, is our ability to understand how spending and projects impacts crashes.
Vice Chair Melinda Harger, I agree. Jessica, I think you had indicated that you were hoping for some feedback. I would say I thought it was good to tie it to roadway ownership, and I'd be interested going back, whether that's 5 years or more, just to see what that data looks like when you take a look at tying it to the roadway ownership for those past years too. Are there any additional comments from the group?
Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, do we feel comfortable putting out these draft targets for public comment?
Vice Chair Melinda Harder, so you're just wanting some, I guess, conversation about that? We're not to take a vote? Is that accurate on this one? Okay.
Yeah, you don't need to release it for public comment, just we want to make sure we're all on the same page.
I'm comfortable with that. If others want to chime in as well.
Ed Corton, Community Development Director. Yes, I'm comfortable with it as well.
All right, Vice Chair Melinda Harger, I see nodding of heads and no one else jumping in with any other feedback or comments. So if it's all right with the group, we will move on to regular agenda item 3, which is an update on the performance measures 5, 21, and 23.
Okay. Thank you. Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, and I'll share my screen one more time. Okay. Let me zoom out a little bit for you. Yeah. Okay. As part of Transportation 2040, our long-range transportation plan, we have various performance measures that I've discussed in other agenda items, and we need to update this data as it's available. We decided in June to have a rolling schedule of updating data when it's available. So this is the first time that we're coming back with this data to show you updated data. And there's 3 measures that we have updated data for. This first one is a transit one, the percentage of population with access to a quarter mile of a bus stop. And so we now have 2015 data, which was from when T2040 was written, and then 2019 and 2020 data. And there's no target on this data because this is a local performance measure. Then we have the density of urban areas, which are Eudora and Lawrence. And so we now have the 2020 data there. And the daily vehicle miles traveled per capita. So let me zoom in. We now have the 2019 data for that. So this is just to let you know that the data is here, and then for you all to recommend approval to the policy board that we incorporated into Transportation 2040 and update the performance measure website that we developed that houses all of the performance measures and is the most up-to-date place for performance measures. Any questions?
Vice Chair Melinda Harger, any questions from the group? All right, it looks like we are looking at a vote on this one. Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
Ed Corton, Community Development Director, I'll make a motion to approve.
F. Craig, I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Melinda Harger. We have a motion and a second. Jessica, for the roll call vote. You are muted.
Jessica Morringer, Transportation Planning Manager. I'll proceed with a roll call vote. Ed Corton?
Yes.
Jeff Crick?
Yes.
Melinda Harger?
Yes.
Wendy Kerner?
Yes.
Lindley Sanford?
Yes.
And Chad Voigt?
Yes.
Okay, that's 6-0. Allison Smith has departed us at 3:02, so she was unable to vote on this item.
Okay, Vice Chair Melinda Harger. So moving on to item E, quick updates. Item 1, safe routes to school.
Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. We have released as of the last week, at the end of the week, October 2nd, the Safe Routes to School plans for Lawrence, Baldwin City, and Eudora out for public comment through October 19th. And we will then be bringing drafts back to you with that public comment and our response to that for TAC and MPO Policy Board consideration in November. That'll be some longer presentations of the work process we've been through around safe routes to school for November. And so look forward to that. We'd be happy to entertain any questions about that process at this point. The other thing we currently have out for public comment, which we've had previous discussion about, is our 2021 Unified Planning Work Program. And the public comment period from September 30th to October 30th. And that will also come before TAC and MPO Policy Board in November with the public comment we received and our staff responses. So those are some big work items we have that kind of lay the groundwork to finish up some stuff we've done and set some implementation in progress and also lay out our next year's work plan. So that's all the updates we have for you today. I'd be happy to entertain any questions anybody may have about that or anything else.
Ed Corton, Community Development Director. I want to thank Jessica and Ashley and any others that have been part of the Safe Route to Schools document. The comments have been very positive and favorable, and we appreciate your effort on that. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Melinda Harger, I would echo those comments as well for staff. Do we have any other items before we adjourn other than mentioning our next meeting date? It looks like we already know a couple items that will be on that. So November 10th at a same time, 2:30, will be our next meeting.
Yes. And normally our meetings are the first Tuesday, but we moved it because of the election. So it's November 10th.
All right, and we don't need to vote to adjourn, so we just say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.